What's up, guys? Welcome back to Engine25 Reviews. 3 months ago, I said that we were going to start posting episodes more often, and then I suddenly had a pretty significant life change and had to suddenly move. So I'm in a new place now, and we're back. The show where I invite friends, colleagues, academics, others who are generally just way funnier, smarter, and more qualified than me. And we talk about movies, TV shows, and just nerd out about stuff we think is cool. If you like that, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and tell your friends. I'm going to do my best to get episodes at least bi-weekly, usually on Sundays, sometimes more often. There's a lot of movies still to come this summer. If you ring that bell, you'll never miss an episode. We're available on video on YouTube and as an audio podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Hopefully more to come. Just search Engine25 Reviews on your favorite service, no space in Engine25, or hit one of the links in the notes down below. My name is Brandon. I'm your host. You can find me at Engine25 on all the things. Sometimes there's an underscore at the end. Today we're talking Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. But before we get there, I want to introduce our guests. Two regulars on the show today. We got Catherine Burrell. She's a communication PhD student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, specializing in film studies. And we have Wesley Boudelier from the Viewers Productions YouTube channel. He's I didn't update this, so I'm going to read it anyway. He's got a pretty cool series on his YouTube channel about E.T. Called The E.T. Enthusiast that everyone should check out. There's some really good content there. How's everybody doing today? What's up, Katie?
Well, just the grind of the academic life.
Good times. And during summer, no less. You're still
always,
yeah,
always hustling.
What about you, Wesley? How's it going?
Doing good. Trying to stay up to date on all these movies. Trying to get my AMC A-list to work out, but it's hard to keep up.
It's been a big summer so far. I've seen Indiana Jones has been out for a little over a week. I've seen that twice. Saw Asteroid City. What was the last one? It wouldn't have been The Flash. Well, I saw The Flash, but there's got to be something in between there. Anyway, it's a big summer for movies, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But
Guardians 3. Sorry.
Yes.
It was like, what have I seen?
Guardians. Oh God, that was 2 months ago. Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
So Indiana
Jones.
And the Dial of Destiny was directed by James Mangold, who took over for Steven Spielberg, who directed the first 4 Indiana Jones movies, has a reported budget of $250 to $300 million, which is quite a bit, and has, as of July 9th, earned $247 million, which isn't that great. I have said that. I feel like I've said that a lot about a lot of movies lately, but it is. How do I?
Flop City out there.
There's a term for this, actually. I'm not remembering it distinctly well, but it's something collapse, right? Basically, it's kind of like colony collapse, but for Hollywood. And the idea is that studios are putting so much money into so many big blockbuster films that there's going to be too much choice and not enough interest to go around from audiences to go see it all and then prop up the rest of the studio projects. And then everything implodes.
Paralysis of choice. Movies are too expensive. There are a lot of reasons, but and I've been saying this all year. There are too many movies this summer. Too many big IP movies that, every Friday there is some big title that is coming out, and it's erasing any potential of whatever came out the last 2 weeks. It's like, and not to say that I'm not saying anything specific about any of these movies. It's just that there are too many of them too close together, and there's half of them should have been delayed till next year. And it's and especially with a writer's strike, we're there.
It's about to be rough.
If you're already complaining about the quality of the content we're getting right now, then it's not going to get better in the next year, because there's been a writer's strike for 2 months with no signs of slowing down. So it's there. If half of the movies that come out this summer waited until next spring or next summer, they would all be making more money. But that's.
I wonder if we're also seeing repercussions of the pandemic that we're just like maybe are more invisible now because so many titles are coming out now.
I think it's,
and I feel like they've stacked up and moved so many times that so many of them somehow landed right here.
I think that has a lot to do with it. They're all suffering. All the studios are suffering financially because of the pandemic. And when I say suffering financially, like they're still making millions and billions of dollars.
Fine.
They're fine, but it's like they have to please shareholders and blah blah blah. And this is like, and they were just convinced that nothing was going to make money up until now because of the pandemic. And then we got Top Gun Maverick and Jurassic World, and then hey, we can release movies next summer. Let's release everything we've been sitting on, and that it doesn't work like that.
And then DC was like, bring on some new people.
And that's a whole
like now.
A whole thing. I think, I think that's a good time. Like I can't. This is a conversation for another podcast. I can't tell you like all the feelings I have about James Gunn's Superman movie, and it's like Rachel Brosnahan. I don't know David Cornsweet, but he looks the part. And it's there were some rumors about people he was screen testing, and there were some other names there, and it's like I don't know that Rachel Brosnahan would have been the first one I picked because like she's already a star, like, and I would have rather had someone a little more unknown take both roles. But also like I can't argue with Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. Like it doesn't, like, even though it wouldn't have been the person, like I wanted Emma Mackey to get it, but it wasn't. That's not because I like her better than Rachel Brosnahan. I think they're both incredibly talented, and it's like I can't. Weird. If you remember when we did like our very first episode on the show was me and Katy. We reviewed Zack Snyder's Justice League, and it's like I had so many thoughts. Wow. It was 2 years ago, by the way. I had so many thoughts about Superman, and it's so it's I'm so excited about, and it's 2 years away. You know, like we know almost nothing. They might have a big info dump at Comic-Con in a couple of weeks, but no, it's
as a Henry Cavill stan, I just have issues with absolutely all of it.
Henry Cavill. It's not. It has
I know
nothing to
you
do with
do.
that. It's when they let Henry Cavill play the character, he's wonderful. When all that other stuff is just it's very grating on the senses. But we're not here to talk about Superman. We're here to talk about Indiana Jones. So getting back on track here. Wesley? What's your history with Indiana Jones in the past?
I was always a big Indiana Jones kid. I loved watching all of the OGs as a kid, and then obviously when Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, that was the only one that I've ever seen in theaters up until this point. And everybody else, of course, was throwing a hissy fit about it. But I was like 14 when it came out and was like, oh man, that was awesome. That was like classic Indiana Jones. It was so cool, so fun. So I don't think I've ever had a bad time with Indiana Jones up until this point.
I have some thoughts about Crystal Skull also, and they're not gonna win me any points. What about you, Katy? I know you were very excited about this one.
Yeah, much the same as Wesley. I'll just say that, I was also about like 14 when Crystal Skull came out, and so I thought it was great in the moment, and I a lot of I grew up going to the movies and watching movies, and I have wonderful parents who constantly kind of like broke down the movies on the way home with me, and like it's a very like sweet, very kind of generic story about why I do what I do, right? And I think it's because of things like that. And so I remember going to Raiders with my family, or not Raiders, Crystal Skull with my family, and we all like I remember having like a very like dualistic feel for like or opinion of the movie. Like as an Indiana Jones movie, I was like yes, like this is hitting, like I didn't know these terms at the time, but I was like, it's hitting these narrative beats with these genre codes that are like really indicative and like make it really fun, and like they've made a good movie, but also recognizing that some of the verisimilitude is off and some of the direction is probably not what needed to be in certain areas, etc. Anyway, all that to say that I absolutely love the Indiana Jones franchise. And I think it stems back from Raiders, because I saw Raiders when I was very young. Like, I knew Indiana Jones from a very young age. And for a very long time, I was interested in archaeology as a kid. And I thought it
and paleontology because of Jurassic Park.
Yeah. And so for a while I thought I might go to school for archaeology. And then I realized that I didn't want to be chased through the desert by Nazis. And I was like, it's like everything I think I would love about archaeology. Maybe it's just from the movies.
Funny story.
Maybe I wouldn't like it so much in the field.
Weird tangent about that. Not that I think that you would the running through the desert chased by Nazis that's a false equivalency.
Right, exactly.
In 2023, but
yeah.
For a while when I was younger, like my dream job was to go film nature documentaries, unrelated to Indiana Jones, obviously. And it's like, okay, so when I grew up a little bit and learned what you have to do.
But what's the reality of that?
You go live in the bush for 6 months and you shoot 16 hours a day. And if you're lucky, they use 90 seconds.
Yeah, that was kind of my feelings about not actually like going into the Hollywood industry, either as like a practitioner or an actress. And that's exactly it, because I knew that what I wanted to do was actually more on this end. It just took me a while to figure that out. But I use that, I don't want to be chased through the desert by Nazis thing as like the stand-in for that, like of like realizing the realities of like what that job might be. And I'm still very interested in it. I watch a lot of TV about it. So my like approach to like how I think about like what I do and my interest in film like goes back to the whole like, well, I don't want to be, Karen Allen running through the desert being chased by Nazis.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So I have an interesting relationship with Indiana Jones. I was a big, like, when I was young, I was all about like dinosaurs and monster movies and Star Wars. And then Indiana Jones was this thing that I would always watch and enjoy. Like, and I'm sure we had the trilogy on VHS, but I know we had Temple of Doom on VHS, and it's like always one that I would be like, hey, look what it's under the cabinet and there's just dozens of loose VHS tapes, and every now and then I would stumble on looking for something to watch after school in the afternoon and find Temple of Doom, and then I'd be like, maybe I'll try this again, and I put it in, and the way I remember it, at least, is it was always like stuck in the scene where the guy pulls his heart out. And that would scare the crap out of me. So I'd be like, all right, I'm not watching this. Like when I was young, like that was scarier to me than like Alien. And I don't know why that was. Whatever. Alien's a monster movie. This wasn't that. But I never found the other movies on VHS, but I would always watch them when they came on TV. Like I always talk about the like movies that were on TV in the 90s, and Indiana Jones were always among them. Raiders and Last Crusade especially, and then I would probably watch Temple of Doom up to a point, and then I'd be like, all right, Temple of Doom it never really worked for me.
Not my favorite.
Yeah. And Willie Kate Capshaw is like very annoying, and I was always annoyed by Short Round. I've come around on Short Round because Kiwi Kwan is such a delightful person. But just for a lot of reasons, I was never a big fan of Temple of Doom. But I would always watch Raiders and Last Crusade when they were on TV. And then grew up, was able to buy my own DVDs, and then that's probably when I really got an Indiana Jones, like middle school age. It was just one of the ones that I watched constantly, along with like Lord of the Rings and that kind of thing. And then Crystal Skull came out, and that was like, me and my high school buddies were big like midnight premiere things, and this was
I remember those. I did those.
The first, nowadays, and for years now, the first show you can buy is like 7 p.m. the night before. And that wasn't a thing yet. Like, then the reason that exists is really unfortunate, and we don't have to talk about it because it's terrible. But
yeah, do you want to know the very first midnight premiere I ever went to? I never did any Harry Potters, never did any of that. It was the Dark Knight Rises.
That's a good one.
That was that's what I was talking about. I remember, like, there was
I know.
The Dark Knight Rises. And
I remember we got home and we read the news and we were like, "What the hell? Whoa, weird." And then we didn't realize like the gravity of it, and I was like, "Damn!" And then no more midnight premieres for anybody.
Like, the first Transformers movie had like an 8 p.m. on a Thursday, and I thought that was super weird at the time. But anyway, not related to this. But yeah, so we got a big crew. I was probably the biggest fan of Indiana Jones in the group. Maybe David, who's been on the show before. He's like he was with us and that he was probably the only one who liked it more than me. But yeah, it's like walking out of Crystal Skull, I had enjoyed it. Like, in fact, I had enjoyed it quite a bit, and it wasn't until I had seen it a couple of times. Like, and it's sometimes it just bums you out to like, you have this thing you really like, and everybody's like, man, I don't know, but.
I've thought about that conundrum a lot. And I just want to, because maybe this will help how we think about that. And I was thinking, because I realized that I do the same thing even now with a lot of things. And I think the difference is that like as fans, we approach like new things like Crystal Skull, right? When that was new, with like one eye of like, of a very much like a film like person, because fans are so wrapped up in films, and so like I think fans are really good at also using that like dualistic perspective, and so that we can engage like in the movie theater, but then when you step back out, you can also put on a different hat. I think fans are really good at that.
And that's a good point too. Like, I was just like, and it actually makes me chuckle that Wesley is bigger on, or he's higher on Crystal Skull than most. Because it's like I am generally the Crystal Skull apologist in the conversation. I don't think, ultimately I don't think it's very good, but it has its moments. It has a lot of the same problems that Temple of Doom does. Like, frankly, there's some problematic, like vaguely racist things in Temple of Doom, but like beyond that stuff, it's Temple of Doom takes a good idea or a cool like action piece, and it just like takes it one step too far. It's just a little bit too much. And Crystal Skull does that the entire movie. Like, this is like they drive the car off the waterfall over a tree. The monkeys. Like, okay, conceptually, Crystal Skull doesn't bother me that much. Indiana Jones was based on 1930s pulpy serials that would play before feature films. So like Raiders of the Lost Ark is extrapolated from that idea. And then they aged up Indiana Jones based on the age of, Harrison Ford had aged 20 years by this point, and that puts it in the 50s. And the Red Scare and aliens it's like that was a big deal in the 50s with those same pulpy movie serials, and like following up after the Roswell incident, whatever that actually is. That was in the late 40s, blah blah blah. So it's just like putting Indiana Jones, who was already who in the past has encountered supernatural things and has aged up into the era where those types of stories are appropriate. It doesn't bother me that Indiana Jones encountered aliens. I think Crystal Skull fails on a lot of the execution, but there are a lot of good ideas in it. I think Harrison Ford is still Indiana Jones. I love Kate Blanchett. I love Ray Winston. You can never argue with John Hurt. I think
even Shia LaBeouf is not bad in that movie. I think him and Harrison Ford are really good together.
I agree with you. The only issue I have with Shia LaBeouf is the monkeys, and that's not even his fault. Like, it's I love the ants. It's like it could have been.
I even like the refrigerator. I'm all for the
Yes.
refrigerator. I think that's
That's
fun.
like the one thing that I pulled away.
too far.
I think it's fun. I think it
I
works.
love it. I love it.
I mean,
It's cool.
I don't think you can't argue with the image of Indiana Jones in the hat up against the mushroom cloud, but the way that we got there doesn't work. But and then again, this is coming from somebody that enjoys the movie more than most, and that's my speech about Crystal Skull.
It sucks that so much of film has been like course corrected due to like the loud opinions of older nerds. It's like I loved the Star Wars prequels growing up as a kid, and I really liked Crystal Skull, and then it's like everything changed because the dorks who were like already like aging out of it were so loud and angry about all of it that they're like, well, no more Indiana Jones, and George Lucas is selling Star Wars. And I'm like, would things be different now if
that's the thing. We were talking about budgets. Talking about budgets and box office. Go take a peek at the box office for Crystal Skull. It made $800 million.
I know, if I knew that we could
Just
just keep
worldwide.
getting Indiana Jones movies.
Worldwide. And up at that point, like and this was 2008. There wasn't $1 billion movie every other weekend. Like that was a lot of money 15 years ago. And frankly, it's still a lot of money now. Like it's still there isn't. The reason we didn't get more Indiana Jones is this all the vocal people on the Twitters were just like they weren't having it. Just like some of the older fans had some negative reactions to the Star Wars prequels. There are a lot of people that have some negative reactions to the sequel movies too. There's like it's this cycle, and it's fandom's weird.
Like my favorite of the new Star Wars movies is the Rian Johnson one, and the second one. That's an unpopular opinion, apparently. But I'm like, as a
It depends who you talk to.
stands. As a film, it stands.
Yet another podcast, but the half of The Last Jedi that's about Luke, Rey, and Kylo is a masterpiece about legacy and failure, and the rest of the movie is a big weird mess that doesn't work.
Yeah,
that's yet another. The movie's a mess, but I'm the apologist. I like this. I enjoy it. It's better than Rise of Skywalker.
but this speaks to a bigger conversation that I think is also part of Dial of Destiny. Is that the studios are taking so much input from fans.
They need to stop listening to fans.
Yes, exactly.
And anyone who was on my side up until this point, they've just clicked away from the show. They need to stop listening. Like they just need to make their movies and stop listening to fans. Like, and eventually they'll make something that resonates. Like,
Rise of Skywalker is the biggest culprit of that, like course correcting due to fans. They're like, actually, there were lots of Snoke clones, and it was Palpatine all along. You're like, what the hell are you doing? This was not set up.
We didn't get more Indiana Jones movies because of the fans. The Force Awakens is what it is, and I would actually say that I would say the Force Awakens is a solid movie. It became what it is because of fan outcry. Most of those Transformers movies are terrible, and I think a big reason to that is because they started listening to the fans, and the fans don't know what they want. The fans are not writers.
The fans are also not.
Transformers movie is pretty okay.
The fans are also not knowledgeable about how that language is created, right? Like that cinematic language and how an adaptation works. Ironically, these are all things that we could talk about the same and differently with the Witcher series on Netflix. They need to simultaneously stop listening to the fans and also listen to the fans. Because I think that's maybe like the one instance that I can think of where some of this is like thrown out the door. But I think if it's not stop listening to the fans, it's stop bringing in so many other voices. That's the problem. And so, like,
you need a clear vision. I agree with that. And it's like, stop listening to the fans sounds pretentious and like aggressive. And I don't mean for it to sound that way, but it's like, well, it's
just an instance of like what you do with adaptation, whether that's from a book series or an existing franchise. It's how do you take the things that are integral and put them in different situations? It's not how do we take these things that are integral and update them, right? That's the difference.
I would say that that's what Rian Johnson was trying to do, but it's there. I have no issue with fan service. I have issues with pandering.
Yeah.
It's you,
or just blatant disregard for what is there. And I don't think that that's what Dial of Destiny has done at all. I feel like not even Crystal Skull.
That's far from what Dial of Destiny has done.
Dial of Destiny hit it out of the park.
All right, we're officially 25 minutes in. Let's talk about this movie. Oh man, I've seen it twice, and we'll talk about it in detail in the spoilers. But my biggest question, biggest question mark walking out was, all right, I enjoyed that, but I'm getting an echo from you, Katie. I hear me super low coming back from you, and it's lighting up on the Discord.
I have no idea why.
That's all good.
I just turned my fan off. Maybe it was the fan. I don't know.
Oh, it's me. It's probably picking me up in your headphones. Anyway, walking out of the Dial of Destiny, I was okay. It takes a pretty big swing in the third act, which we'll discuss in some more detail in the spoilers. But does it work for me? And I think it did. I would say that most of the other Indiana Jones movies take a pretty big swing in the third act. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Crystal Skull, I don't think we needed a flying saucer. I had no issue with seeing the aliens. Big swings. But he's still Indiana Jones. He's 80 years old, and that's a thing. But he's, Harrison Ford has never stopped being Harrison Ford. You can't not like him when he's on screen. You know what I mean? And it's they brought back John Rhys Davies. The cast of this movie is fantastic. I had no issues with Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I love seeing Antonio Banderas. Wesley and I were talking about that earlier today. Antonio Banderas is exactly the kind of actor that needs to be in an Indiana Jones movie. Just finding out that they're old friends from Indy's Explorer days was it made me smile. And one thing that I'd like to say is it's directed by James Mangold. It's the first one that is not Steven Spielberg. I don't think they could have found somebody better for this reason. Going into the movie, it's James Mangold has a very old Hollywood kind of sensibility.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly what you need to make an Indiana Jones film, because we talked about it earlier, the Indiana Jones was trying to emulate old Hollywood. You know what I mean? It was a love letter to these black and white movie serials from the 1930s. So it's I think that it's kind of probably the best choice, which is a wonderful thing to be able to say. And overall, I really like this movie. I don't think it's perfect. But we say that on every show. But this is it could have been a lot worse than it was.
I've given up hope of a perfect movie. I just don't think it's possible.
Back to the Future, Galaxy Quest.
Can't argue with those. E.T.
Oh, see, E.T. scared me as a kid. I can't watch it, which I know must be very, very sad for you to hear.
E.T.'s pretty amazing.
I completely agree with all of the points that you brought up. I think James Mangold, with his diverse filmography, directing filmography, I feel like I would love to know his authorial intent behind all of it. But I feel like having so many different films under his belt, different films, right? They're all very distinct. Logan to 3:10 to Yuma, Walk the Line, Kate and Leopold, Ford versus Ferrari. They all, in a way, I think, prepared him to put all these different kind of things together for a film like this that requires so much knowledge across aesthetics and technology and just all of it, right? So I thought it came together really well. And I honestly forgot that I wasn't watching. Well, I won't go that far. Steven Spielberg has such a distinct filmmaking style. I'll say I almost forgot that it wasn't Spielberg directing, but not quite.
What do you
I
think,
don't
Wesley?
know. Nobody has the juice like Spielberg. Like every action scene in those other Indiana Jones movies, you're like, oh man, he's cooking. But this felt more like, I don't know, it felt more like what we're used to seeing nowadays. It didn't feel like it had the special ingredient, which I guess is Spielberg. And I don't know, I liked, there were a lot of action scenes and like things that I thought were fun and exciting, like in the first bit. And then once like the real adventure kicks off, I felt like that whole like second act is kind of dull and there's not much going on. Like Indiana Jones fighting eels was not like doing it for me. But like the stuff on the tuk-tuk, that was cool. The stuff on the horse, that was cool. But
the horse and the tuk-tuk, I think, are like those like checking those boxes. And I totally get what you're saying about the eels. I was like, is this Ariel?
Tuk-tuk, the three-wheeled cart thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. But and in that moment, I realized like this sequence, like with the eels and everything, is not about the action of it. It's about the slow, emotional build between Helena and Indy. So it took me a while to get there though. You know? So I definitely get what you're putting down.
It came together more for me after the second viewing for sure. And it's really like James Mangold said on Edith Bowman's podcast Soundtracking, like following the intro that takes place in the 40s, which we'll talk about. But the opening of the movie, like Indiana Jones he's like lost his mojo. You know, he's and that's James Mangold's words, not mine. So it's about and I think Indiana Jones is actually younger than Harrison Ford. I think because Indy was born in 1889 or 1899, so that makes him 70, 71. But it's we find out why things are, you know, why he is the way he is later in the movie, but it's a kind of a weird like finding himself and who shouldn't know who he is better than someone who's lived a long full life. But it's, you know, where am I? What am I leaving behind? What do I have left? And he has to answer all those questions for himself, really. And he does that a little bit through this new relationship with his goddaughter, meeting friends, just going fighting Nazis again. It's fucking Nazis. No, so it's Indiana Jones finding himself, like, and it's more clearly like, I would say this movie has a clearer arc for Indy than most of the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's not a knock on any of those other movies, but it's really he's very different at the end of the movie than he is at the start, and I don't think that's the case for most of the other movies, even the really good ones. Like I would say that the only other one that has a real substantial arc for Indiana Jones is Last Crusade. You know, he's reconnecting with his father, but he's also realizing that like he's been prioritizing the wrong things in his life in Last Crusade. Mm-hmm. And it's his, at the end of the movie, his father, who has spent his entire life looking for the Holy Grail, and he has to tell Indy to let it go. And that's a big deal. And I think, this has a very similar kind of, what did I say earlier? Like, where am I do I have left? And that's, he has to figure that out for himself. And Helena helps him along the way, and she becomes a little more family oriented throughout the movie. But it's a really poignant. I've lived a long life, and I've lost some things that are really important to me. And what do I do now? That's a really hard well to dip into, and a hard road to navigate. And I think the movie does it very well. I think it's bloated. If it probably in this state, it didn't need to be 2.5 hours long, but I also think that you could have had a solid movie of the same length to tell basically the same story. But like I wouldn't necessarily disagree with Wesley that it feels bloated in the middle part. But no, it's like this. I've thought a lot about Dial of Destiny, and overall I really like this movie. It's something really special, and I don't, I wouldn't say it's better than Raiders or Last Crusade, but I think it absolutely belongs in the same conversation. I've just realized that I've been talking a lot.
No, you guys are passionate about it. I feel like I'm the bummer of the group because I didn't dislike it at all. It's just I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like it was decent and it was good, and I'm glad I got to have a little fun adventure with Indiana Jones. But it's hard when like a series has already come to like a good conclusion now, like twice, and it's kind of like the Toy Story 4 thing where it's like Toy Story 3 was like the perfect conclusion, and it's like, oh, what happened after? And it's like, oh, it's still like a pretty good movie, but like,
I will follow that up.
Did we need it?
I didn't think we needed Toy Story 4 before we saw it, but then Woody's story is very important in that movie.
It is good, but it's a kind of, actually, now that I think about it, it's kind of a similar arc where it's like, what am I good for?
You're absolutely right. It's like, okay, so I've fulfilled my purpose. What do I do now? Is like that's what Toy Story 4 is, and he has to find a new purpose. And that's
just kind of a bummer. I don't know that I don't know that I need it for every character. Like
the Toy Story movies aren't the happiest when you break them down.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't want to act like I'm looking for the fan service stuff, but it felt like he was just being dragged along on this adventure. Indiana Jones was by somebody who didn't really give a shit about him up until the end.
Pay attention the next time you watch Raiders.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, though, why don't we talk about Helena? Because she's...
Let's talk.
Yeah.
I know you have thoughts. Tell me about Helena.
So this is so interesting to me because I was talking to my mom about the movie, and we kind of categorize it the same way. Like, right? Like, we go Raiders, Crusade, and I think Dial of Destiny, et cetera, et cetera. But we talked about, the first thing that she texted me was, yeah, I like that. I agree with you. But I didn't like her. It's like, why? Why not? And she's like, I just don't buy her in that role. And anyway, we had a longer conversation, and
Phoebe Waller-Bridge she has a specific sensibility that doesn't gel with a lot of people. Have you ever watched Fleabag?
I have not, but I'm aware of.
It's like
I feel like that's the film scholar thing to say.
British comedy, and it's like I don't know that it 100% lines up with this because it's also like kind of raunchy and this and that, but there's a specific British kind of humor to anything where Phoebe Waller-Bridge is involved in the writing, and she's not credited as a writer here, but she's probably like this.
She has a very discerning eye.
Fingers in it, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, she's married to Martin McDonagh too. Like, she knows like that language of writing,
she's married to
right?
McDonagh?
Yes.
What? Okay,
I didn't know that. That's wild.
Yeah. He was at Cannes when they premiered Dial of Destiny.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So she has a very distinct eye. She knows what she's doing on a different side of the production, but she also, like, that distinct eye gives her leverage as a performer, right? But my conversation with my mom turned into like, she was like, I just think that maybe she is like these are not her words, but they're her sentiment, right? She's that pandering to the younger generation. She gels more with the younger generation than like the older dorks, right? That
the older dorks. Okay, so
no.
I don't want to make this a conversation about like wokeness, but I'm gonna I have no
woke.
Well, like on principle, I have none of the issue. Like, I don't understand why wokeness is a problem. Like, it's ultimately it's fighting for good things. I think that it's a little ham-fisted sometimes. I also don't think that's the case here. I think it is absolutely okay, like to have a strong, smart, independent woman in a movie. She also she has a story arc here too. It's not, and some of the biggest comedic moments are to come from Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Like that's all wonderful. Like I have no.
Yeah. What they do with her character is almost it's not even duality. It's like triality almost. It's like she has like herself, right? That deals with like the loss of her dad and wanting a better relationship with her godfather. And then there's a part of her that is like this very strong businesswoman type of like takes no, BS, and she just like she's that archetype. She's like three different archetypes, because then she's like has this whole plot about like breaking off an engagement, and like being like a very like femme fatale.
A lifetime of happiness.
Yeah, exactly. And so she's like playing like this character is just playing like three different goals, three different archetypes, three different like everything, right? And so I think that's where some people fall off with her, because they're like, I don't know where to place her. But that's the point of the character. But it's a valid criticism as well. So
I feel like Twitter gave her a bad rap before the movie even came out, because they were kind of trying to paint a picture of she is like this woke character. And I think there was even a tweet that went around that.
And again, I am not speaking against wokeness, whatever that is, but the trailers made it seem more like explicit than it is in the movie. Like you take it's called capitalism moment out of context, and that's and not to say that they're not commenting on capitalism, because I think they are, but it seems a lot more ham-fisted when you drop it in a clip in a trailer than it ultimately did in the movie. Like,
yeah, I think Twitter took that and ran with it, like the worst sides of Twitter, and then
the worst sides of Twitter, right? Yeah, exactly.
There was like a tweet going viral where like a quote that was, I don't even think actually in the movie, but trying to basically paint a picture of that she's this type of character, and it really wasn't that at all.
Yeah, for reference, folks listening, before we started recording, we had a long conversation about Twitter and the toxic hellscape that is social media.
Yeah, that would also be an interesting case study. It's probably too late to pull that data, and Elon Musk doesn't make that easy anymore, apparently. But the whole thing about this movie is not necessarily about I don't know, it's not about who is or isn't in it for adventure, right? It's not even like about adventure, really. It's about
in it for adventure anymore.
It's explicit, right?
Yeah.
And she's not either. Nobody gets pulled into this movie for reasons that they want, right? And I find that to be a very interesting struggle throughout the movie, is that people are constantly playing against each other and themselves in a game that they did not ask to play. Helena might be the only person that doesn't quite line up with that. But I feel like at the same time, she
proactive character in the movie.
Yeah.
And then that's not followed up by Indy. Sala tries to help, and he's standing at the airport ready to go with him, and Indy says no. So it's I also, as I would kind of poke fun at Wesley earlier, that's not the first time that's happened in an Indiana Jones movie. If Indiana Jones was not in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Nazis still would have found the Ark, they still would have opened it, and they all still would have died. And that, people give it some criticism because it's, I'm not going to say it's unfounded criticism, but like, Indiana Jones isn't like active in the third act. Whereas he really is in The Last Crusade. Like we have to see him working through the puzzles. And in this movie, yet again, he's just kind of along for the ride for a good chunk of it. So it's
literally.
Yeah. Well, let's talk before we move on to spoilers. I want to talk about production design and like kind of the overall look. I mentioned that James Mangold has a sensibility and an aesthetic that I think really works for Indiana Jones. I really like the color grade in this movie. Like it's all really, really warm. And it's very, very filmic. And that's weird to say because I know it was like if you watch the credits or whatever, like it was shot on Airy, so it's like everything's digital, but it has a really like old, like it's what am I trying to say? Like an aged negative, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't go all the way into like a sepia overall, but it's just like a really, really warm. What was that?
Saturated.
Yeah, like kind of. Like almost yellow, and it's really interesting because like it doesn't look exactly like the old movies, but it looks like an old movie. Like, and it doesn't look like the old Indiana Jones movies. I'm sorry, to be more specific, but it does look like an old movie, and then I like that a lot. And I can't help but mention the de-aging thing at the first chunk of the movie. It takes place in 1944. The Nazis are losing. They're freaking out. And Indiana Jones is played by both Harrison Ford and a younger stuntman, and his face is digitally replaced with younger Harrison Ford. I
just want to pause you for 2 seconds and acknowledge that recap of the end of World War II was the most succinct thing I've ever seen. They're losing and they're freaking out.
Yes.
That's the gist of it.
And that's literally what's happening. Like they're losing and they know it, and they're like, okay, so he's on a Nazi plunder train because they're trying to take all the Golden Run, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's and I heard another podcast, Chris Gore, who's kind of frankly become an old curmudgeon in ways that I don't really like, but he's I agree with him sometimes, and it was kind of like his opinion on this movie was he wanted the whole movie to be the movie we get at the beginning before it jumps into the future. He wanted 2 hours of that. And like
me too, honestly.
I know that I would disagree with that, but I also like the movie we got. So I wish that there was another movie in between here. But
I think that's a testament to how well that first sequence works because it gets us set for like what Raiders was, right? And like evoking that and doing it well. And I forgot about the CGI face for a while.
I was
if you're looking for it, you can see it.
Because the thing about digital de-aging or a digital face replacement, whether you're de-aging or turning them into an alien or whatever it is like people spend more time looking for it than they do watching the movie. And I would say this is one of the better ones that we've had. They did the same thing with one of the two Barrys in The Flash.
That looked terrible.
It's terrible. This is not.
I didn't go see it.
I'm like, how do you mess that up? They've been doing this since like back in the day with like The Parent Trap, like having two actors like with each other, like Armie Hammer and The Social Network. It's like they'd have them next to each other, and one Barry would just be like CGI face, and you're like, how did you mess that up?
So I didn't want to go see it in theaters, but I'm looking forward very much to watching it at home.
I actually like it a little bit, but the CGI is rough.
Moments like there were absolutely highlights in The Flash. Like I think the DC movies have always had a third act problem, and this doesn't fix it. It's
I see why they think they had a hit on their hands. Like I see why they were like adamant about putting it out, but people were not interested apparently. But I don't know I don't know if deep fake Indiana Jones works for me all the time. There's a couple times he looks like a character from the Polar Express a little bit, and it kind of takes me out of it. But
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with that. I wouldn't say it's perfect.
No, I don't either.
I would say it's one of the better ones that we've had.
And I think that if you can like actively try and like if you're looking at other parts of the frame, which I think they try to do a lot, the cinematography lets you see the world of this first sequence. Like they do a really good job of like not letting him be the sole focus of this
And
introductory.
They don't want you looking at his face. Like,
exactly.
There's a lot where they're like the camera's behind him, like he's walking through a train, like trying to look like Nazis. They're like,
yeah. But it works so well narratively and visually that I feel like it's just done well. It's smart and it's entertaining. And when you're not taking an eyeglass up to the CGI, it works. You know, I was engaged with the rest of it enough to be able to like.
Toby Jones is great.
I was gonna say it bums me out that we don't get more Toby Jones later when they were like, "Oh, he's died." I'm like, "Oh man, I was ready for more Toby Jones adventures."
The second time
that should be a spinoff.
I watched the movie, like the first time I watched the movie, I was like, "So why is Indiana Jones aged 30 years and Mads Mikkelsen looks exactly the same?" And he really doesn't. Like Mads Mikkelsen is also digitally de-aged in that first scene. Like,
is he? I couldn't tell.
I mean, the actor's only in his 50s, as opposed to Harrison Ford has 30 years on him, so he's de-aged to like an early 30s ish, as opposed. So it's not as drastic a difference, but they definitely Matt.
I'm
definitely CGI.
I'm gonna make a confession, okay, and I'm gonna sound really stupid. I could not. This was my one thing about the film. Well, my second thing about the film. And then once I figured it out, I was like, oh, okay.
You're too smart for whatever you're about to tell us.
No, I'm not. I swear to God. I could not figure out how, like, I thought the Mads Mikkelsen character had also time traveled. I thought that's how he got to the 60s because I could not tell a difference in his age. And I was trying to figure out.
Uh-oh. Wesley.
Sci-fi style. And I was like, okay, somehow he just arrived here and he looks totally the same. It took me forever to figure out that, no, he didn't go anywhere. He survived. Yeah. He aged up and the United States recruited him. It was like, how did I not get that? But it's because of the aging. And I was just like, he looks the same. I didn't catch it.
That's not a total fabrication either. Like, not to say this Voller character isn't a real person, but no, the United States took Nazi scientists and used them to make rockets. That's a real thing.
And that's why I'm like, I was trying to figure out this whole like time travel thing, how he got there. He's back for revenge. And I was like, no, he just got redeemed.
He's definitely de-aged in that opening sequence. He's just that he's
I couldn't tell.
Well, it's not as big a difference. Like with Harrison Ford is 80 and you're making the actor 45, and that's whereas with Mads Mikkelsen, he's he's in his late 50s and you're making the actor 30, and that's not the same difference. Like
especially with a man that does not look like he's in his 50s.
That's true.
Right. Anyway, so that's my confession. And that was my, like, when I walked away from the film, I was still trying to figure it out. And it like took me, and that's why I feel so bad. It took me literally forever. Like I had to leave the theater and think about it because I just couldn't get it. And I was like, oh, okay. No further questions.
On the note of Mads Mikkelsen, like he worked better for me on a second viewing. Not like I liked him. He wasn't that interesting, but it's like, no, he's very slimy. Like when he's talking to the waiter at the hotel, is just like this.
Yeah.
He makes me feel gross. Like,
yeah, he gives you the creeps the way he's like talking about.
It's so funny.
Nazis are kind of cool, right? And you're like,
no. I do not care for these new Nazis, and you may quote me on that.
Asking the poor guy like where his ancestors are from, and he's just the poor like the waiter like doesn't want to talk to him. He's like, I grew up in Brooklyn, sir. Like it's like,
yeah,
that might be the best thing about. I don't want to say he's like the standout of the movie or anything, but like the fact that Mads Mikkelsen has now played an Indiana Jones villain makes the whole thing kind of worth it, because like he just looks like he should be fighting Indiana Jones.
And he said recently,
is he Dutch? Is he?
He's Dutch. He said recently that he's like, I'm very aware that Hollywood has typecast me in this kind of role. I get it. So I come over here and I do that. And then I do very different things back home. And it's true. And he is such a versatile actor. And so in all of his like smaller, like less like, Hollywood-y projects, he's very like, he can play very like soft and caring and very like.
Americans just cast him as European villains. Like
and he's like, I get it.
I don't blame him or Giancarlo Esposito for cashing in on those villain money.
Also Dutch. He's Dutch with African descent. He constantly gets cast as Latino. Like,
yeah.
Thing.
And anyway, villainous.
Yes. So any final kind of general thoughts before we move into spoilers? Anybody?
No.
Oh, I lost where my script is. Oh God. I can't see it. There it is. I'm going to move over here.
I will say, can we take a quick bathroom break before we dive into spoilers?
Yeah, go ahead. Me and Katy will get it rolling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and for listeners who have not seen the movie, we are now going to talk about whatever we want until we're done. So, so if you haven't seen the movie, go check it out and come back. But I don't. Oh, Wesley he turned off his camera and he's got.
Yeah, it's all good. All good.
And it's adorable.
Yeah, so this movie, I feel like, is very predictable in some ways. But what really stood out to me that I wasn't really expecting was like to actually, I didn't expect them to spend so much time having time traveled. And, you might say they hardly do, but there's a good like 15 minutes, I think, or so of screen time where they're like actually.
At first, I thought it might be too much, but
it's
like I think it totally works. Like it.
Yeah.
So to be clear, we're talking about the end of the movie when they have used the dial, which isn't a time travel device. It is like an algebra. It's a calculator basically. It gives you an algebraic equation that tells you where these fissures in time will happen, which is apparently just a natural phenomenon. And so then they fly through the portal, and they end up
that nobody else has ever observed, like any scientific measurements. But anyway,
it's 1969. It's maybe someone else has figured it out in the last in the last 50 years when meteorology's come a long way. But
true.
It's so they the Nazis think they're going back to 1939. And we're going to talk about why, because I think it's actually really interesting. But they instead go back to the Siege of Syracuse, which happened in 214 BC or something like that. So then they're there for 10 or 15 minutes, and they talk to Indiana Jones talks to Archimedes, and it's pretty awesome. And it's like, okay, is this? Again, I was like, is this too much? Does this work? And it's no different than him talking to the knight from the Crusades. It's
exactly. That was my thing. I was like, is this too much? And I'm like, but he goes through such weird stuff. And if you can like contextualize the way that the stories go in this franchise and just like take them out of like the verisimilitude of present day, like, is it believable? Do I buy this? And if you can just look at it as a story and not having to make sense, right? Then I think that like within the whole franchise, it makes complete sense and it works with the other titles.
I agree with that. And I wasn't, it's definitely a big swing, and it's something that could have gone very, very poorly. And I was afraid going in like, okay, the trailers kind of made it seem like it was going to be a time travel movie. And it's like, okay, one thing I don't need to see is Indiana Jones chasing Nazis through time. Like there were rumors that he was going to go visit the other movies, and it's like they were going to bring in like digital versions of Sean Connery, and it's like no, that was like
Indiana Jones Quantumania into the Indyverse.
We don't need that. So it was in the past. Indiana Jones has encountered these supernatural phenomenon, but it's usually kind of sequestered in the third act, and this is no different. The Dial of Destiny, which is, again, it's not a supernatural device in its own. It's a calculator that just kind of tells you where to go. And it's actually based on a real device. The Antikythera is some sort of, not a clock, but a clockwork mechanism that was discovered in like early 1900s or something like that. It was, I read about it, but the dates they give in the movie are real. Like it was a real thing that was found. It doesn't look anything like the one in the movie. Like it looks like it's 2,000 years old and is crumbling and just, it's not in good shape. Whereas the one in the movie looks like shiny gold, basically. But it's based on a real thing. And I don't know if we know what it was actually for. So the fact that it was a time travel device was like extrapolated, but no, it's yet again, Indiana Jones takes a thing that was a real historical artifact and writes this very interesting chase around it. And yeah, that's probably where I was going. It's interesting to me that it was like the crystal skulls are real. They don't look anything like that one does in the movie. But like the Holy Grail is, I don't know if it's a
real, quote unquote,
historical, but it's definitely in the stories. The Ark of the Covenant probably was a real thing, quote unquote. It probably didn't look like it does in the movie, but it's whether or not those things are historical, but there are stories written about them, and this is no different. And I think that's very cool.
The time travel works for me up to a point. I was telling you about it this morning, where I like when they're on the plane and like the Nazis are freaking out, and he's kind of like laughing at him like, oh, look what you did. And I was like, how the hell are they going to get out of this? It was like so crazy. And then them just like shooting and them getting hit with spears and stuff, like that was all really cool. But then him like meeting Archimedes and then being like, I want to stay here. I was like, okay, I get things are bad at home, but like, do you see what's going on around here? Like, you're smarter than that, right? Like, this is crazy. That's when I got to that point, I was like,
okay, so
maybe let's get out of here.
Let's break this down. It's okay. In Indiana Jones, number one, he's been tied up for 20 minutes. It's another like, yet again, another movie where he's kind of inconsequential in the third act. He's not the proactive character here.
Mm-hmm.
But he finds the dial for the Nazis, and then the Nazis capture him and take the dial. Or the last component of the dial. So then the Mads Mikkelsen assembles it, does the calculation. They get on a plane and go to where the dial tells them to go. Indiana Jones figures out along the way he says continental drift because it hadn't been observed in the time of ancient Greece. So what that means is like wherever the location that is at those coordinates is today is not the same that it would have been in 212.
Which I liked. I liked that. That was kind of smart.
Yeah. And like I don't know how much sense that actually makes, but it made the Nazis kind of freak out. And then they fly through the portal, and turns out they're in ancient Greece. The Nazis wanted to go back to 1939, but so they let. During this firefight,
no, they're in ancient Rome, Roman times.
Yeah, right.
Oh man,
you're totally right.
I almost said ancient Rome earlier, and I thought I was wrong. So thank you for
you're totally
being the one to take the ball.
Glad to help. I was like, they're in Sicily.
Yeah,
I was like, where is that?
So Indiana Jones, he gets shot again. And then the plane is crashing because it's the Romans think it's dragons, and they start launching spears and fireballs with catapults at the plane. So the plane's going to crash. He and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, they parachute down. And then Indiana Jones has this like big existential crisis because it's like he's realizing that he doesn't think he has anything to go back to, that's a very important thing that we need to talk about. But so he's just okay with he's going to live out whatever time he has left in ancient Rome. And by the way, he can talk to them. And I guess he's probably speaking Latin, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you? And I'm just making that assumption, so I assume that you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But so he talks to Archimedes.
I do not speak Latin, by the way, but I just know
that would be it. Would I don't know if there's a language specific to Sicily.
I don't know.
Other contemporary languages would be like Egyptian, which is in the same kind of part of the world. But I'm gonna assume it's Latin. Anyway,
I'm gonna feel really stupid if that's not right, so I'm gonna look it up. Yeah. Hold on. I was like, wait.
I feel like if it was anywhere other than ancient Rome and he was like, I want to stay, I'd be like, okay, I get it. But it's like people are throwing spears and shit. You're not gonna be.
It's Latin. It's Latin. Yeah. It's Latin. Okay.
He's accepting number one that he doesn't have a lot of time left. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge is trying to talk sense and it's like, number one, like we don't know what you saying here is going to do to time. That's not a good thing. But also number two, you're going to die. Like we get you back on the plane. We have medicine. We can fix you. You'll be okay. But if you
he's in shock and a panic, right?
Yeah, he's in shock and he's having an existential crisis because again, for reasons that we'll get to, like he doesn't think he has anything to go home to. Like he thinks it's over with Marion, and he's in like
no more mutts.
The most incredible situation he's ever been in. He's a big history guy, and he just talked to Archimedes, and those are all the last bits are very cool things. So it's like he's ready to just resign himself to whatever time he has left and live it out in ancient Rome. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge has to be like, no, you're going to muck everything up and you're going to die. We have to take you home. And ultimately she punches him out and loads it back on the plane. And then
that was pretty good.
That's my favorite part, actually. And I think that works so well. I love it.
And I, not a criticism, but I will just say that I've said it a couple of times. Indiana Jones is not the proactive character here.
No.
Yeah. It is.
And you know what I think that stems from? He's, and this goes for all the films, going back to like, he doesn't do anything in the third act. He's not a monomythic superhero. That is not his job in any of these movies, right?
Yeah.
And so he is a human, and they have always emphasized
this stuff
the man.
It's not happening because of him.
Exactly. And in so many ways, he is the voice piece. He is the lens that the audience sees the film through. Oftentimes that's like a different character and maybe not the lead character. In these films, he is the one that the audience identifies with. And so why I love that moment where Helena knocks him out so much is because it's like he's lost sight of that for a second, right? And she all of a sudden can become that other role, right? She is also acknowledged as the audience in this adventure and in this story. She is also so human, which is why she plays so many different archetypes, right? And so I just love that moment because it's almost like passing a baton in some ways, but recognizing, but not. It's not. It's like, here's the voice of reason.
Not becoming Indiana Jones. Yeah, I like that
right.
point. Like she's the voice of reason here.
Yeah.
But like, this isn't a poking fun at Shia LaBeouf is going to be the next Indiana Jones. Like it's that kind of situation. But he's not in a good mental state. He's in shock. He's bleeding to death. Like, and she has to take charge and be like, no, this is not okay. And
because he's human.
Yes,
he's human,
and she is too. And she's just she's in a very different place than he is in that moment. which is fine. That's
their whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah. That's so I love that dynamic so much. And I think I for having been in this time traveled ancient Roman world for like 15 minutes, like it feels like a long time, like in watching it. I don't know how long it actually is, but they spent more time there than I thought they would. Maybe they didn't need to show as much as they did, but I also appreciate that they didn't drag out getting out and like getting back to their time. Like they just cut.
We did not need like a big action scene fleeing the Romans,
Right.
We don't need that, but we didn't need it because that's not what this moment is about.
And I appreciate that James Mangold assumed that the audience is smart because audiences are smart. And so we know enough to get that there's a second plane that can be flown, right? And they can get home. We know that. And so we don't have to be shown it.
Yeah, we didn't need more Teddy plane antics.
Yeah.
I was telling Brandon that's like the exact thing that happens in the third act of Phantom Menace with Anakin and the Starfighter. It's like almost the exact same thing.
It's
very much Anakin vibes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
anyway, so I liked that sequence. I think it's surprising enough, and if you can go with it, it works. If it's hard for you to buy into, I totally understand why.
I think
I do
tastefully, and it's like it's a lot, but it's not too much. Like again, with this movie is not a time traveling romp. Like, and not to say that I don't want to see a movie about chasing time traveling Nazis, but it's like because that sounds like a great time, but it doesn't fit here, right? So no, like I think it was great. Like I had questions about it. I watched the movie again, and I am absolutely sold on the ending for Dial of Destiny. It's great. We keep, or at least I feel like I keep bouncing around the big thing here, which isn't actually like the time travel. We talked about Indiana Jones' character arc, and the reason Indy's lost his mojo, again, Mangold's words, not mine.
He's been watching some Austin Powers.
Which, by the way, if you notice, and he points it out in that podcast, everyone should listen to, especially if film music is a big thing for you, listen to Soundtracking with Edith Bowman. It's fantastic. But there's a you hear the Indiana Jones theme a couple of times during the intro in the 40s, but you don't hear it again until like midway through Act 2, and it's just that he doesn't have his theme, right? His theme is the mojo. Yes, he has to. Yep, he's beginning to find himself again, and when that begins to happen, you hear the music, and I think that's
pretty good.
Thing that makes me nerd out about just the way movies are constructed, and movie music is a huge deal for me personally. Anyway, again, I'm skirting around the topic. We find out when they're on the boat. They found Antonio Banderas. They're going to find the map to the Antikythera, and he and Helena are just having a chat. And Helena just kind of he asks what she thinks is going to be like a simple answer. What would you do if you could go back in time? And he says, I would tell my son not to enlist because he's going to die in the war. And it's like, okay, that number one, that explains what happened to Shia LaBeouf. But no, that's a can
of worms.
And he blames himself, right? Because he Mutt enlisted because of Indy, but like not for he did it for the wrong reasons, right? So and then he didn't come home, and that's just an unfortunate reality of like war.
Yeah.
It's terrible, and it put a wedge between Indiana Jones and Marion, and
it's so human.
Yes. He's just a guy, He's an old guy. He's seen a lot of things, but he's
and that takes a toll on one's mojo.
It does. No, so it's this the whole movie, like, and you see early on when they're in his apartment, like he's got like separation papers, and then he covers up the picture of Marion on the fridge. Like there's little Easter eggs as we go, but we find out why things are not okay for Indiana Jones, and it's probably like right around 2/3 of the way through the movie, and it really sets up. Okay, so this is what's going on in his head, and the rest of the movie is him coming to terms with that, and like he has to accept that it's not his fault, and he has to find a way to continue. I'm glad I got to the mute button in time. And it's just like it's so real.
And then what you find out at the end, when Karen Allen comes back in as Marion, is that she's like, are you back? And so you find out that it wasn't necessarily his death that drove them apart, or like them not being able to deal with it, or his guilt or her blame, or whatever. It's the fact that he could not deal with it himself. Mm-hmm. And she never left him, right? So that's what he has to come back to, and he just doesn't know it. Like he had to find himself again after this. He had to go through a grieving process and find that.
Yes, and that is losing anyone is hard. Losing a child is like this unspeakable, and and he didn't even know. He didn't meet Mutt until he was an adult, right? But at this point, he would have spent 15 years with the kid or whatever, and it's just like it changes a person. It absolutely does, and it's very, it takes a toll. And Indiana Jones, like at the end of the movie, he was just like resigned to the fact that he wasn't going to be able to fix things at home, so he was gonna hang out in ancient Rome and let whatever happens.
Yeah. I find that in these themes that come up that take time to think about, right? And you have to kind of compare them to the other films as well. I love the attention to detail that they put into his character. Not just for the sake of the story or the plot, but just for Harrison Ford as well. He's so invested.
And that is we touched on it with Toy Story a little bit. It's like, why do we want to revisit this character and make this movie? Right. And I don't know, even as a self-proclaimed Crystal Skull apologist, I don't know that we got the reasons for that movie to exist. Like, at least, and maybe I say that now that I have this movie in my head, and not having, I've watched that one a couple of years ago, but it's, why do you go back to the well? And it's in this case, they had a good reason. And it's, it could have, they didn't have to do this, and the movie would still be totally fine. But they had another story to tell with Indiana Jones, and apparently, like, some of this stuff came from James Mangold, because when he got involved, there was another version of the script that he requested rewrites for. And he's I'm looking at the Wikipedia. He's credited as a writer here, but the time travel bit was a James Mangold edition, and he adjusted the story so it's more about Indiana Jones aging and coming to terms with these terrible things,
and being human, right? Yes. And I think that's like so many of James Mangold's films, like Logan, is about being human, right? In some ways, right? But it's about like the man.
Yeah, like Logan he's superhuman and he's lived for all this time, but like he doesn't have anything left. Like in fact, like you could draw some parallels with this story, but he has to.
I have to be totally honest. I haven't seen Logan, and I am pulling that film studies. I know of it, but I haven't seen it card. Okay. I'm assuming that I was on the right path there. Please.
I'm not as crazy about Logan as everybody else was. It's pretty good, but
I'm disappointed.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's.
But please continue. Please continue telling me that I'm right.
They're very similar, but like it's also like we don't get a lot of the fatherly relationship with Indiana Jones and Mutt, whereas like in Logan, part of it's the girl that finds his humanity for him, like or at least having to take care of her points him in the right direction. So like it gives.
I'd argue it's the same thing for Helena, though. I mean, she is very obviously meant to be a stand-in for a child of his, right? And not only
he feels
that,
responsible for her.
Yeah, but he feels responsible for her on 2 levels, 3. One, as like a child, a younger person that he has responsibility for, right? 2, as an academic. He will respect her as an academic, right? And 3, kind of related to 1, is her father, right? His own personal relationship outside of the one that he has with her. So
that he kind of feels like he messed up, and then he didn't.
Yeah.
Her father died before he got a chance to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she represents so much of all of these different things because she is a chance to make it up to what's his character's name? Her father. I don't remember.
Toby Jones.
Yeah, I'm just like Toby Jones. What's his name?
Is their
Shaw.
last name.
Yeah. To make it up to Toby Jones. He gets to make it up to her. He gets to make it up to him. He gets to make it up to his son. He gets to make it up to himself. I mean,
Basil
just
Shaw.
right.
That's it.
Basil.
Yeah,
Yes.
Baz, yep.
Like that's a great name. I love that.
So she just is a stand-in for so many different ideas and relationships and people and things for Indiana Jones, right? But what I think the film does so well with its multitude of humanness, right, is that she does not let herself be that for him. She's like, I might, none of this is said, right? But her character is very much like, that might be how you see me. Like, this is like my purpose here as a character in a narrative, right? But her character traits themselves, or the different archetypes that she plays, lets her stand alone in that and have her own journey and say, do I want a relationship with this person? Is it too far gone? Like, what do I actually want to get out of this? And I would have been okay.
She's using him as a means to an end because she wants to find Kyle so she can get rich and famous.
Right. Yeah. And I honestly would have been okay if they go through this whole journey and she is just like, thank you. I've gone on a character development arc, but I don't need a relationship with you. And I think it could have also worked that way, right? Because they were both able to do some healing out of this journey. Anyway, all that to say, I think James Mangold had an idea of like how to play the humanness that I appreciate, and not just with Indiana Jones, but also with Helena Shaw.
I think we needed a scene like in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 when Rocket is like in heaven or whatever and sees his friends. We needed that, but with Indiana Jones and he sees Mutt and a bunch of monkeys and he's happy and swinging with them. He's like, okay, I'm good. I'll go back to Earth.
We don't need monkeys. We're good without the monkeys.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Well, hey, they're in theme with all the others.
True.
No, I'm kind of coming around on this movie a little bit. You guys are selling me a little bit on it because there are things I really do like. The stuff with Karen Allen was great.
Mm-hmm.
And Harrison Ford is just kind of knocking that out of the park. Like, he is still like such a great actor,
and
and
he's
kind of
winning so much right now. Like he was on 1923 or Shrinking. He's so good in Shrinking.
Yeah.
The Apple TV
He's
Plus
gonna
show.
be in the new Captain America movie.
I know.
Yeah.
You know what? He doesn't have a mustache though.
I don't care.
I still think they're gonna do like a reverse Henry Cavill and like CGI one on there.
They had better not. You just triggered me. Oh my god. No.
Reverse Cavill.
Maybe they're gonna make him look like William Hurt.
Yeah, all this just to get Harrison Ford and like put dots on his face and make him look like William Hurt in post.
Sorry, I'm just imagining it. I'm just like, they would do that, right? Like somebody would be stupid enough.
Have you seen like the quotes from Anthony Mackie about working with Harrison Ford? And he's like, "Oh yeah, Harrison will sometimes just be like, all right, let's shoot this shit." And it's like, Anthony, I don't think he was kidding. I think he really maybe just doesn't like it.
Right. Yeah. No, I was like, yeah, but I found it so funny and on brand. You know, I just.
He's my.
But
favorite.
also at the same time, I don't think Harrison Ford would take on a project now without actually being interested in it. You know,
Maybe
so.
it's hard to say.
I mean, he's old.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, he is old. I don't think he would be expending so much energy.
Yeah, I wish we could have gotten another Indiana Jones. This whole time I was like, oh, the only reason we didn't get one is because Harrison Ford is old and he's done with it. But if I'd known this whole time, we could have been getting like at least 2 more in between these. Like, I would have been all for it.
He's always wanted to do. He's always liked Indiana Jones better than he's liked Han Solo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But also, like, if there was another Indiana Jones movie partway through that was like mixed, and then we didn't get this one.
Yeah.
It'd be worse.
Yeah, I would take this one. I think it has enough to dig into. I think it's made with the assumption that people are smart and people can intuitively pick up on things. And if they identify with it or they interpret it that way, great. If not, that's fine too. You're not going to satisfy everybody and you're not going to be able to speak to everybody's experiences in one story. But the fact that we can sit down and talk about it, like I did not know 90% of the things that I've said, I did not know I was going to say, but I think that's the process of sitting down and talking through things, right? And having the vocabulary to do that in the background and the context as a fan, as an academic, as an ACA fan.
When I have smart people like you on the show, it makes me look good.
Well, I'm doing the good work here. That's what I'm doing. But I have a stack of books here about my Captain America's ass paper that I need to edit. But that's a thing.
You're gonna have to tell me about America's ass when we're done here.
I absolutely will. It's on the front of my Twitter page as well.
Perfect.
But all that to say, I would take this film, Dial of Destiny, over having like 1 or 2 intermediary films if Harrison Ford had been up for making them. I mean, hey, because I think
great, but you know,
right.
There's no guarantee of that. And again,
right.
James Mangold came to this movie having a story to tell. You know,
yeah.
He and if you don't have that, then it's more dangerous to make a movie than it is to just let it hang.
And I think they got the right guy to do it.
Yeah, I agree. But you know, I would ask the same questions. Do we need another Indiana Jones movie if we got one in like 2014? And hey, if it's great, sweet. If it wasn't great, then why did we? You know,
I'll always take more Indy. Always take more Indy, and I hope that. I mean, there's definitely fodder for spinoffs, right? Even just jokingly, I was like, well, that would make a good spinoff, like The Adventures of Toby Jones, Basil Shaw. It would be great.
The Adventures of Basil Shaw.
I can't
Do we
believe
need it? I don't know. I don't think so.
I can't believe they didn't get Kiwi Kwan in there for like after he won that Oscar. I was sure that they would do a reshoot and like get him in there like during the apartment scene at the end. I was waiting for him to show up, and it would have been cheap fan service, but I would have eaten that shit up.
Like like Antonio Banderas' crew or something, and just like get him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate their restraint in not doing it, I guess. But also, if this is potentially the last time we're getting it, like you might as well just do it. Like everybody is going crazy for it anyway. You might as well just feed the dorks.
Yeah, I don't know though. I think that goes back to knowing the audience would also be like, come on, that's so cheap, you know? And they don't want to do that. They want to make a really good standalone with that story. Don't need to call back to anything else too much, right?
Yeah.
So I know I appreciate that they stayed their hand because and just precisely because so many people don't these days. And by people I mean like studios, right?
It might have been too much with that and the like. Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? You can't. Yeah. You can only do so much of the so many of the callbacks, and I think that was probably the right.
That
choice.
was the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Any? Well, we haven't really talked about things we don't like. Go ahead, Katie.
I was just gonna say, I want you to talk about your one thing that you told me that hasn't sat well with you.
It might have been the time travel.
No, it was
Okay. Remind me.
And I agree with you on this. So it's
I didn't have
they don't resolve the murder plot.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
I was thinking that too. I almost said that.
Okay. The assumption is coming back with Helena and the dial. Okay, we're following up on a conversation me and Katie had off the air. So let's fill in some context here. The reason Indiana Jones ultimately goes on this adventure, Helena appears. She's talking about the dial. He happens to have it like in the archives of the university, so he just gives it to her. And then the Nazis and the CIA show up to get it, and so then Helena runs off. And then, unfortunately, the Nazis they shoot a couple of people in the office at the university, and Indiana Jones is going to be blamed for that, basically.
Also, why? Why would he be blamed for that?
He had blood all over his hands, and he picked up the phone.
Yes.
And
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, there's the clear shot of blood on the phone and this and that. So even though he's the one who called the cops, but he would be the one they blame. And then in fact, when he leaves the country, like Sala tells him, if you leave, they're going to assume you're guilty, and they're going to like when you get back, you're going to get arrested. And then that's the whole.
And he says, "Have you thought about calling Marion?" He's like, "Nah."
It's not a good idea. So the Indiana Jones believes, and I suppose this is how the movie turns out. If he needs Helena and the dial to absolve him of murder. They don't clearly explain why that's the case, but they can prove that people were looking for that, and Helena can give a testimony in his defense.
There's a lot to explain. Yeah, it'd be a lot to explain to the cops.
And I'm not saying I don't know that I would defend it, but that's that was the second. One of two reasons I went to see the movie was to figure this out. I went to see the movie again was to figure this out, and then the other one was, how do I feel about the time travel? Ultimately, the time travel works for me. But
the next movie
that could have been a post-credit scene, honestly. Just sitting, at the police department, just going like, okay, and then the dial didn't work right.
That's the next movie. There's
no way they're going to tell people that the dial actually works for time travel.
Right. No. But like explaining like how they get out of the situation.
You have the Nazis were here to find this thing, and then
it belongs in a museum, and then just cut.
I have the thing, so that's why they were here. And then Helena's testimony can, in theory, absolve him. And that's the assumption that he's working on. So, like he leaves the country to go find Helena and the dial because he's wanted for murder, right? And if you leave, they'll assume you're guilty. If you stay, maybe not. But so like he goes to find it to get out of going to prison, and So they don't mention that again at the end. So it's just assumed that everything's fine because Helena and the Dial are back. And I do, I think it's a little clumsy. That's how the movie justifies it. So again, I don't know that it totally works. It's clunky, but it's that.
But it's something you have to pick up on,
yes.
Immediately.
Admittedly, the first time I went to see this movie, I was tired. It was the end of a long week. So I went again on Monday night where I was it was after a work day, but I was fresh. So I was some of the details were easier to remember, but it was that. Yeah. A little clumsy. It is what it is. Indiana Jones doesn't go to prison for murdering two people. And I think that's why. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's helpful because I could still not see. I was able to figure out that the United States recruited Nazis, but I was not able to figure out how he got absolved for murder. Apparently, it's an Easter egg.
They're saving it for the next one. It's going to be a courtroom drama.
Can you imagine? Written and directed by Aaron Sorkin.
Indiana Jones and the turbulent trial.
I love the alliteration, though.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
I'm coming around on it. You guys are selling me on it a little more, which I didn't think it was bad. There were just, I don't know, that whole middle part I'm kind of zoned out on, but I think
it's not perfect. It definitely has some pacing issues, and that I would say the pace is a little whack, but it's also still really bloated. So there's too much in here, but it lags in the middle, and it's so it feels, it's just,
yeah,
it feels a little weird. It feels like there was more. There might have.
They have to course correct themselves.
Yeah.
They should have spaced out some of those big sequences a little more, because I feel the whole first portion is the train, the tuk-tuk, the horse, and those are some of the best stuff, and then you're kind of left with nothing until the end.
Yeah, there's a little bit of time between the horse,
and then we spent a lot of time in the water.
Tuk-tuk. Yeah.
Yeah,
they go diving, and then they go into the caves, and everybody's drowning.
Yeah,
there's a lot of talking through a lot of that, and some of that is good stuff. But it could use some tightening up. I think the whole when Helena is explaining to the Nazi, she's lying to the Nazis about trying to read the tablets and say, here's what all this stuff means, and that means we should go here, and then we should go here, and we'll find it under the statue. Considering that was all just a ruse anyway, that could have been tightened up. There's
also feels the Nazis conveniently show up everywhere that they are. But they don't necessarily need to.
They explain that away with one convenient line where he's Mads Mikkelsen looks at them in the binoculars, and he's they're sailing west, not east. So I guess they're going to Sicily. He just knows.
Yeah.
And then it ends up with them capturing the kid. But yeah, I would definitely agree that it has some pacing issues. It's the longest one, and the particularly those first three movies, they're all right about 2 hours. I would say this, despite being shorter, I would say the same thing about Temple of Doom. There's some, it's really intense at the beginning, and then there's a long lag where it's a lot of dialogue, and even some of that stuff in the temple with the heart pulling, it's just, there's not a lot of action there up until you get to the minecart chase, but that's in the second half. So there's a big chunk where it's not moving very fast, even in the old movie. But it was Temple of Doom is easily my least favorite of the whole mess. So it's easy to knock on that one. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I grew up. But
maybe I should give E.T. a try.
Yes. That's an interesting thing with Indiana Jones, is I always just assumed that everybody thought those first three were classics, undisputed, and then everyone I've talked to, people older than us as well.
Be bad.
Yeah, but
really exclusive.
It's interesting though, because you even talk to people like older than us, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't like that third one, or I didn't like that second one," and it's like always a different one for people. I feel like it feels like there's no like agreed upon worst one for everybody. It's kind of interesting. It's not like every other franchise kind of has the outlier, and everybody kind of
because most people
is different on this.
More or less is an agreement.
Yeah. So on that note, I think we can wrap it up. I'm oh god, it could have been so much worse than it was. Like it's we have a new Indiana Jones movie and it's good. It's not perfect, but it's fun and it's like I can't
and thoughtful.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's so human. And that's such a big deal. Like I think I like this movie even better than I did before. Anyway, I'd like to thank my guests. Oh, my buttons went away. There we go. It blacks out after a while. What am I doing? Well, if you're watching the video, you
got it.
Fumble with the buttons. But yeah, a big thanks to Katy and Wesley for coming on the show again. We have some episodes coming up. We definitely want to do Oppenheimer and Barbie. After that, there's going to be a couple of weeks. I really want to find time to review the new Ninja Turtles movie. If anybody's into that. But as always, thanks for watching. If you want to hear more, don't forget to like and subscribe. My name is Brandon. I'm Engine25 on all the things, sometimes with an underscore. You can find us on YouTube and podcast services by searching Engine25 Reviews, no space in Engine25. We'll be back soon with a new review. And until then, go watch a movie.